Hello.
Singing it out there, Angelique. I'm here. I'm really here now.
Hi. Oh, we have a new confetti. We have a nice background that is covered in confetti. I think I did something here in the stream to change that because
It's
we
very you. I
like
don't
to
think
have
it's
the.
very me.
It was fun,
That's better.
but with my graffiti background and the background and confetti in the stream, it might be a little bit too
Yeah, a bit too
too
busy
much.
for people, maybe. How are you doing?
Exactly, exactly. I'm good. I'm good. I'm very excited about today's topic, the 4-day work week, which is a
Yeah,
very,
me too.
very hot topic. Oh, so what I wanted to talk about today, the 4-day work week. We have seen quite a lot of few headlines lately, where we have mainly shared on LinkedIn without a lot of nuance, saying, "Wow, Belgium is moving to a 4-day work week," and a lot of comments saying it's finally happening, employees are taking over, the world is changing. And what we thought, because the 4-day work week, we know also that those headlines and those comments on LinkedIn and the way it's been presented, it creates traction where people are asking and challenging their business leaders, their companies, say, hey,
Yeah.
isn't it time that we are also, I would love to have a 4-day work week. Is it not something where we can go to? There is like evidence that it's increasing productivity based on companies that have moved to 4-day work week. So today we wanted to move in to look a little bit more in depth. First of all, what are the headlines? I just wrapped up, have a small agenda here. So, what are these headlines? What do they mean? The 4 days around the world. So, what is actually happening? We'll also look at 4-day work week giving more free time, but is it also giving more flexibility? And then look a little bit more into, isn't it really about the 32 hours versus a results-driven workplace? This is related to a 4-day work week. So based on that, first of all, I want to do a very, very quick definition about what we mean today with the 4-day work week. And that is a company
Yeah.
that decides that the business hours are going to be 4 times 8 hours. That is what we mean today. It's not working part-time in a broader scope. It's also not having flexibility through the week, but the 4-day work week, as of today, we work from Monday till Thursday, 9 till 5 in 4 days, and we are expecting the same results that we had before. So
Yeah.
that is what we define for today.
And without a pay
And
cut as well. It's quite significant.
without a pay cut, that's a very interesting difference, because I'm from the Netherlands, where we had the 4-day work week for a long time, in the sense that you could just work part time, but with 20% less pay. And a lot of employers, I actually got it literally said, a CEO said it to me. I'm happy if people go back to 4 days, because I pay them 20% less and the results are more or less the same.
Yeah,
So
that's not what we're talking about today. That's not what we're talking about.
it's not what we talked about. But it is actually already something that was experienced a long time ago. That results doesn't need to be negatively affected with 4 days. This is
Mm,
important to say. Okay,
mm.
Trevor. I want to ask you, Trevor, because you did a interesting. No, you dived a little bit deeper in those um, the 4-day work week around the world. What it actually means, what is actually happening.
Yeah, I mean, so there's the bit that is around the world, and then there's also the fact that within that context, there's lots of multinational organisations that are trying it. And
Hmm.
where I think the headlines get a little bit confused, and we were talking about what's behind the headlines, you'll hear something like one that I definitely came up about a year ago, and I remember lots of people sharing it, was things like Microsoft is trialing a 4-day work week. And then what you find out is it's not all of Microsoft, it's one part of Microsoft, and it's in Japan because Japan's moving in general in that direction. And so that's one of the challenges, I think, is that people get very excited. And really, to date, they've mostly been trials. So that's something that's worth paying attention to. If we look at these examples, so Iceland did this a while ago, and they did it over several years, and it's probably to date the largest experiment in looking at a 4-day work week. And the net result of it was that they saw it as being incredibly useful. They saw productivity increases. They saw, and this is quite significant in the pro 4-day work week camp, is they saw a reduction in costs, which of course you can do if you've unilaterally said this is the day we're having off. So it's not, and sometimes this is the case with the 4-day work week trial, and sometimes it isn't. If you pick a day that you're having off, then you can significantly reduce costs because you don't have to staff offices and things like that. It was very successful. It's probably one of the more successful trials. And as a result, something like 90% now of people in Iceland have this reduced week. And in that transition, this is why I mentioned about the pay, because lots of places have, or lots of countries, lots of organizations allow you to reduce your work week. They were in that moment, as a result of that experiment, able to reduce their work week and effectively hold on to their pay. So a large number of people went, oh, we've done the trial. I think it ended in 2019. So now we're going to do it properly. Dubai led the way in United Arab Emirates. And and that's because the focus, and again, lots of headlines, UAE have moved to a 4-day work week, which is technically correct. Something a bit more accurate is Dubai have moved to a 4-day work week. And in reality, what it was the government just leading the way. So it was federal offices, government agencies. They were kind of moving to this 4-day work week. And they were also, because of the religious implications of when they used to celebrate, when they used to pray and things like that, they used to organize it around that. And they made a substantial statement by shifting effectively to a 2.5-day weekend. So some places doing 4 days, some doing 4.5, but they made a substantial shift. And it was a big statement because it was government agencies, but it was government. And so you'll know that in the UAE and Dubai in particular, it's very much a global workforce. There's lots of expats that work there and lots of global organizations that have got offices there. So in that instance, quite a lot of the time, it's to some extent dictated by them, and the government can't directly influence that, but they can set a precedent. And then the reason why it's been on LinkedIn a lot recently is because there's this trial that's going on. And it's close to home for me because it includes England, it includes the United Kingdom, albeit Scotland are doing something slightly different. But it also talks about Canada. I hope they wouldn't mind me calling them English speaking. So it includes Canada, it includes the US, it includes New Zealand, it includes Australia. It's about 30 companies in the UK, hundreds overall. And for the next 6 months up until the summer, and we'll obviously comment on this when it comes about and write about it, they're trialing that 4-day work week. And again, that definition of they're cutting a day out and they're observing and measuring productivity over those 4 days and seeing what the output of that might be. Now, if it is going to follow the other trials that we've seen, what we can expect to see is roughly a 20%-ish increase in productivity up to about 60%. And we can see a reduction of about 20% in costs. So that's what they're looking for. That's the hypothesis. They should see increased productivity within those 4 days and cut costs. One last thing before we move on is one of the reasons they're doing this is because the popularity has risen so greatly with these smatterings of experiments going on, that now we've got to the point where something like 99% of the workforce think it's a good idea to trial it, even if only 60% of them think it might actually work practically. So that's really why they're doing it. It's the pressure, as you said, the kind of employees taking over headline is the pressure from people to actually do this.
So this is it's like the government are facilitating the experiment, and they
yeah, it's
and together is it, how does it set up?
It's a network of universities that are trialing it, and then they've reached out to organizations to get involved. And there's kind of, I think some organizations put their hand up, and then some of them were sought because they fit the right demographic so that you can come to a conclusion at the end of it. So it's not all cool tech startups of 50 people that are doing 4-day work week. They reached out to larger organizations. So don't get me wrong, it should be good data at the end of it. I'm not saying it won't be. I think it will be good data at the end of it.
And the hypothesis is that with reducing 20% of inputs, you get 20% more output.
Yeah, so they're basing it on the studies that have gone previously, but the basic idea is that if people are less tired, they should be able to do more in the time that's allocated. And a lot of short-term trials have seen very big spikes in productivity. That's the reason why I'm doing it over 6 months. What they want to see is, does the workforce kind of adjust over that period and you lose that spike in productivity? You've got the Hawthorne effect. If people are
Mhm.
watched, there's a good chance their productivity will spike anyway because people are paying attention to them. And they're excited because they're working a 4-day work week. Over 6 months, the hypothesis is that that initial spike will reduce, but when you're saving costs and getting more productivity, should be a slam dunk at the end of it. That's the idea.
Exactly. And how is the cost saving? It's because the office is being used less. Um,
Yeah, that's the
can you,
idea. Is that I mean,
yeah,
the main cost saving that's been recorded, and it's easy to record, because obviously they can't. If you've got a security guard who's now working 4 days rather than 5 days, you can't save cost of
yeah,
his salary because he's part of that 4-day working week. What their main costs are in, like maintenance and in electricity. If you've got a big building running electricity, save 20% of your electricity costs. Save costs in things like parking infrastructure, all those kind of things that you need to enable people to get to work and be at work.
exactly. Yeah. Okay, it's interesting. Well, we are looking forward to those results, and we are definitely going to be talking about them as soon as they getting
Yeah,
released.
yeah,
So in the meantime, we've got quite a few people joining, and I'm really curious to know: is there anybody here in the stream? Is there a 4-day work week in your company? Is that indeed on the agenda? Are you being challenged in your company to trial a 4-day work week? And what is the general consensus about it in your organization? So any comments that you have, just put them in here. We'd love to hear from you. I also want to go a little bit more because you say that 90% of the people, it's quite a lot. A lot of employees are really asking for their work week right now.
yeah.
Well, I work like 4 days a week, like already many years, and I understand why. Like obviously 5 days
Mm,
is a lot. 5 days working full time is a lot. So I can totally understand. Of course, it is a lot more comfortable to have more free time. That said, so I have been an entrepreneur, and I'm actually moved away from the 4. I'm not squeezing my work in 4 days. I'd rather I work. It's probably 5, 6, up to 7 days, but I do not
yeah,
work 8 hours a day. So
yeah,
for me personal, when I was just experimenting, figuring things out that worked for me in a very free context, I came to a different structure. And one of my entrepreneur friends, she told me, she said, "Well, my husband doesn't understand why I'm just working every day and then 6 hours." He said, like, "Why are you not just doing all this work in 3 days or 4 days and then have more time off?" And she's like, "Yeah, because for me this feels better because I have time to go to
mm,
the beach to do my exercise. It's my routine. I'm optimizing my routine in this way." So, and it's quite
yeah.
interesting to put that into the 4-day structure that we are talking about here. So first of all, what is the progress that you think is going on with 4 days?
I'm interested. Just very quickly, I'm interested, based on what you were saying. Do you think that it's about individual kind of needs, or do you think there's something basic human about, like, 5 days is too much for human beings? I know that's kind of the bias I have.
Well, I think that 5 days is a lot. Like 5 days full
Yeah,
time is a lot. So because
yeah,
it doesn't, including commutes, especially if you have 1 hour commute every day, it doesn't actually. People are tired.
yeah,
People are sitting in the
yeah,
television, because they have children, they have to cook, all the day-to-day things, and then the evening people just sit down on the television, and it's just there is not so much time left for learning, for doing something fun, a lot of exercise, arts, music, a lot
yeah,
of things that. So yeah, I think 40 hours
yeah.
uh, is a lot.
That's kind of where I'm at, and so you can tell I'm quite excited about the 4-day work week, and I'm not like 100% bought into it as the ultimate solution to everything. But I guess my pitch, as you put here, is that it's progress, and it has a few advantages. So one is it starts off with people effectively increasing their salary, if you think of it as an hourly rate type salary. And so, already I think that's going to be a boost to well-being if it's done on a large enough scale. And I think that making just even having this conversation is progress. because lots of organizations I've worked in, people are going, 4-day work week is more productive, it's much better, why aren't we doing it? And as you said, there's like this tension about, well, leaders not really knowing how to take that step forward. And I think the more people prove that it can be done and you can keep wages the same, the more people just start to think about all options, not just the 4-day work week, and that it is okay to transition, it is okay to keep people's pay the same and not worry as much about, are they getting their hourly rate, but more, are they productive and are they creating the outcomes that we need on the same money? So I think of it as like, it's a really big step forward in a way that organizations will get comfortable with, because they'll recognize there's hopefully going to be some cost saving, so they can kind of sell it a little bit more easily. I think put myself in the position of like being an HR professional as I was in the past. I think I'd have an easier pitch, albeit it would still be a really hard one, to sell in a 4-day work week than just go, I want everyone to be able to cut their hours and work how they want and keep paying them the same amount. I just think it's a bigger leap for more traditional organizations in particular, and large organizations, to do anything other than the 4-day work week. So my pitch, if you like, and I know we're going to have fisticuffs on this, my pitch is it's a great first step that I think is a possible first step.
Exactly.
Did you like my pitch?
And I agree. If it is a step, if it is indeed a first step and not a dead end, so I think there's where we differ a little bit, because it's exactly what you just said. The idea, well, the progress in my view is, I'm definitely agreeing there is progress in the sense that we are starting to be more effective and to are more results oriented. This is basically the way we
Yeah.
need to go. We are looking at results rather than inputs, and that is great. That is great progress, because that is it is a mindset shift that we really need, and also to get that idea that we are not um, we pay people by the hour or for 40 hours, and we are buying their time.
Yeah.
It is with the 4-day work week, we are moving away from that, but we are not entirely moving away from that, because you are putting it in 4 days. So there's also another way to make a first step, that's also not entirely results driven, but we can also say, well, okay, so if we agree, and because of the results of all the trials and what we're going to see in
Yeah.
companies, let's say that indeed we have 20% more productivity and 60% of 20% less cost if we work in 4 days. But
Yeah.
4 days is 32 hours.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I work probably 32 hours. I don't know. Like, I don't really count my hours, but some weeks might be less, some weeks might be more.
Yeah.
But I don't do that in 4 days. And also, interesting enough, Trevor, you say you are a independent consultant. We're really excited about the 4-day work week. So, why have you not implemented that in your own weekly structure?
I'm not excited for a bit for me. I'm excited for everyone else. No, but I think there is something else, which is if people move en masse, and this is another thing. We use the example of the UAE, just the government did it, or we use the example of Microsoft, where only one country did it and one department or one division. If you move en masse, then it becomes easier for everyone else. Otherwise, you just end up with that disease of people who work
Hmm.
part time, work 4 days. They end up doing 5 days working 4 days. So it needs to be en masse for everyone to be able to cut back their work. And of course, it's only really true for certain types of work. Some people will have to always work 5 days, 6 days. So even then, we're slightly biased and privileged. We're saying it's kind of knowledge workers, maybe, certainly people in tech, not necessarily the service industry. They're not going to be able to immediately like shut shops for 1 day a week. So, we've got
Yeah.
that bias, but I'm excited for other people. I saw a question.
Yes, but I'll park it for a little bit. It's a great
Oh,
question.
okay.
Yeah. Well, we can actually answer it. It's because it's about the cost saving. Becky, hi
Yes.
Becky. There many organizations have moved to remote work and are not going back to traditional in-office mentality. What are the other seeking points? There wouldn't be cost saving from electricity. Trevor.
Yeah. Well, so potentially there still would be. So I don't disagree with your point, but potentially there still would be, because at the moment we've got this level of flexibility, and some places have maybe reduced their footprint in their offices. Some places have kept it, but they've just created more creative spaces. If you shut down that office for 1 day a week, you're still getting some cost saving, albeit maybe not quite so much where everyone would have logged into that computer all on the same day. So there will be some savings. And I think that's why they've downgraded the savings that they're expecting in this trial. There have been much greater savings made. I think the selling point from here on, and this is why you need big trials as well, by the way, is you have to be able to demonstrate that you get a small saving and a small or maybe significant uptick in productivity over a long period because people adjust and they feel more rested, that kind of stuff. And then that becomes good enough for some organizations. Got a bit of a saving, spike in productivity or long-term productivity gains. And I think that's going to be the selling point. But you can't do that. You could demonstrate overnight you're saving electricity. You can't really confidently say you've got the productivity gains unless you do a long-term trial. So for organizations looking to do it, I would recommend, like a small scale experiment, and probably after some of this more data from the UK and Australia and New Zealand and Canada come out. I think that's the starting point.
But I would indeed say I rather, if I was CFO, I'd rather have lots of space and make sure, that it has been filled in 7 days a week. Um, from a productivity point of view, like from that cost saving point of view, and having an office building that is empty for 3 days a week. This is,
Yeah.
I really also, we can challenge that cost saving, and it's great that you brought it up, Becky. Thank you. So,
Yeah,
any other
absolutely.
questions or comments, please put them. We're happy to answer them, and they really add value to the stream. So, if we also look at the 32 hours, you can potentially, it's the same thing that you just said. What I'm surprised is that, well, the big leap in mindset is that we now have to understand that we can, as my CEO 15 years ago already said, we can have the same results in 32 hours. But
Yeah,
we think that that should be in company defined office hours. So
right.
instead of saying, well, you can make this, let's just say 32 hours if we still want to define a number of hours. But we say it's 32 hours that we expect you to work. We pay you this amount, and these are the results we expect. And you can work whenever you want. Make it even like a little bit more easy, saying, okay, let's have some flexible times. You can work between 7 and 7. And you can do that
Yeah,
5 days a week or 6 days a week whenever
yeah,
you want. But then it's harder for us to understand or to believe that we can have the same results in those 32 hours, and that people will have 32 hours, because we still feel, and this is the factory mindset that I'm always talking about, because we are stuck
yeah.
in the factory mindset. And we are still thinking that people need to come to a place, or at least if, there could be a virtual place between certain
Mm,
times to work together. And then, but you can even say, okay, we are like, we are just speeding up a little bit the factory so the people need to work harder. If you would have done that in the 20s and 30s, you would have the
yeah,
unions all over you. So you can
yeah,
also have
yeah.
that
That's
as
true.
you can have that as a counter argument. You just
Yeah,
make people work harder. Okay, people have more free time, but you can say that. So
I agree,
it is
and I
still,
think I think there's something about people valuing rest. So as well as educating the organisation and potentially governments, as we're seeing in the trial, maybe there's also something about educating individuals to value rest, because if people know that their productivity and their outcomes are still important, or even their output in some instances, but certainly their outcomes, then there's a real risk that they go, oh yeah, I've signed up to 32 hours, but I've always worked more hours anyway because that's what I do because I'm so important or I'm so busy, or all those things that people think are really valuable and go into their egos. So there's a real risk they don't value rest, and therefore they never really stick to the 32 hours, even though the company says they can if they wish.
yeah. And so if we look at existing research, because there's going to be a pilot in the 4 day work week, which of course I'm
Yeah.
an organizational sociologist, so I can't wait to see the results. But I also know about other research. And so if one of them is my own research, which is based obviously on very respected other academics, um, innovation needs autonomy. And a 4 day work week is the same as a 5 day work week, unless you really make that leap to results driven. And
Mm.
autonomy is also allowing people to work where they want and when they want. So if I wake up on a Saturday morning and I have a great innovative idea of a great inspiration idea, I should be able to do my work on the Saturday morning. Innovation and creativity is not something you can in 4 days in the specific hours. I do
Yeah.
understand there is a collaboration issue, but if you cannot manage to collaborate with people working async, then there's another problem. If you really need to say, okay, we need to work together in those 4 hours because we can only collaborate if everybody's at the same time online or present in
Yeah.
the same office, you have another problem. You have a
Yeah.
problem that you need to address because it's not sustainable for the future. We
Yeah.
have
Agreed.
research that 4 to 6 hours is optimal for our brains working in technology and innovation and creativity. Nobody can be productive in 8 hours. So if you are assuming that we are going to be having more productivity from Monday till Friday, 8 hours a day, I think there is something really wrong in that assumption because there's a lot of proof that we and also for well-being rest I prefer to do that on a daily basis having my
Yeah.
what you're gonna do your exercise are you gonna do exercise 8 hours a day on a Friday because the
Yeah.
rest of the week you won't be able to exercise. So if you want to have a good balance also for your own well-being, I would recommend to have the 4 to 6 hours. You can spend every day a little bit more time with your children. You can
Hmm.
spend every day a little bit more on having a nice nap or lunch. So, and also we expect people still to come to a place or in a virtual place to work full time. It is not inclusive because not everybody is able to do that. It's also not
Yeah.
sustainable in the long run, and these are all reasons that we are also moving to global staffing. We are working in different time zones if you really want to have strategic advantages. So if I were challenged as an HR director on this, I would say I would prefer to say, okay, you guys want more free time because this is what employees want. You want
Yeah.
to work 32 hours for the same pay and get a result. Well, I give you extra, instead of, we talked about that, Trevor. I said, well, employees asking for their work week is basically prisoners asking for better circumstances, for better food, and more comfort in their cells. But
Yeah.
you're still confined in your prison. I prefer to open the doors of prison and say to people, you know what? I'm just going to empower you to do your best work in the times that you want to work them. And if it's 32 hours, it's fine. If it's 28 hours, it's also fine.
And I know we have to finish soon, but I think you make a really good point, and it's a strong counter argument that's sometimes hard to articulate, which is that if everyone's asking for this thing, and it makes sense from a business point of view, we should just give them this thing that they want. But I think there is definitely an element of it feels like an organization again giving permission rather than an organization asking their employees to be more responsible and more accountable. And so the risk is you just end up in another trap of employees
Hmm.
looking to the organization to solve their work life integration problems. And so, whilst, as you know, I'm a fan of doing it as to get things moving in the right direction, I do think you will still inherit that problem of a workforce that is then looking again to the organization to solve things and looking again for the organization to do things across the board. When actually, what we really want organizations to do, if we have our hand on our heart and we believe it was possible, is for organizations to treat us as individuals and for us to have accountability and responsibility. So I guess it comes philosophically whether you believe your workforce, if you're out there as a HRD, is ready for that responsibility, and your leadership believe they're ready for that responsibility, or if your next best step is to do something more interim. And no one can really answer that for anyone, but I think the fact this happening at all will mean it will open up all sorts of conversations, not just 4-day work week ones. That's my hope.
Yeah, well, let's see. I would actually also want to invite people that are working in a 4-day work week and that have been making the move to contact us, or people if you're really starting a trial or any, like if it's very concrete, because we know a lot of people are interested in the topic, but we would like to talk to organizations that are moving towards it, already experimented with it, to share the
Yeah.
results, to come on here on our LinkedIn Live as a guest, share the results, talk about it, talk about how they came to it, what were, what is the process, what and how, everything that we want to ask about it. Also, we are addressing the I call it the retail model, because we had a question from one of our members saying, okay, when I worked in retail, we opened the hours, so we got more flexibility for our clients. So let's say the 7 to 7, people can work
Yeah.
from between their own hours, between 7 to 7 instead of 9 to 5. That is something that we talk a little bit more about next week. The pros and
Yeah.
cons, where people can actually, have more free, more individuality in working times. Yeah, we already are 5 minutes past time. We can talk for hours more, obviously, but we won't.
And we will.
So we will, like, but not today, not now. So
Not
next
today,
week we have
but we
another
will.
30 minutes. We will be back on a Thursday next week. This was an exception because this
Yeah.
is every Thursday at 1 p.m. UK time. We just invite you to keep the conversation going. Check in with us. There's always something interesting in the topic. We want to keep on thinking, keep on learning from each other. Nobody really knows what the best way forward is, because we are experimenting and we
True.
see that so many companies are experimenting and we are looking different ways, and we need this collective intelligence, and this is what we do with the Monday Club. We get you all together to grow and learn and rethink work and drive change. Thank you,
Yeah.
Trevor. See you next week on
Thank you,
Thursday.
Angelique. Good to see you
Um,
again.
and thank everybody in the stream. And if you watch this later, still also please put something in the comments, because we will be seeing them and revisiting them.
Yeah. Good shout. Take care and see you next week.
Bye bye. Bye bye.
Bye.